Hi, good morning, and welcome to Creative Fuel for Underdogs. I am so privileged to have the wonderful Bob Gentle with me today. And Bob is my personal branding coach. And so, welcome to the show, Bob.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's my privilege, not yours.
Your privilege. So, let's start with just what is personal branding and how do you help people develop a personal brand?
Well, straight off, personal brand is a phrase I think is often overused and misunderstood. I think the reality is everybody has a personal brand, whether they like it or not. The guy who runs the paint shop down the street has a personal brand. The question for me is how intentional are we about A, cultivating that, and B, amplifying it? Personally, I've moved away from the phrase personal brand because it's a little bit pedestrian, if I'm honest. I'm moving towards this idea of a leadership brand that we don't simply want to show up, but we want to show up as leaders. We want to shape how people think about us, cultivate the opinions people have about us, and amplify that as widely as we reasonably can, given whatever it is that our goals are.
That's wonderful. And previously we were talking about how this whole process is transformational. Can you talk a little bit about how leaders are transformed going through this branding process?
Well, everybody's different. Everybody's journey is a little bit different. And I think one thing I've discovered is there's only one kind of person who's really comfortable with being a visible leader, and that's a psychopath. Um, Most of us have to really reflect on, well, why do we want to be visible? And what are all the barriers on the way? Because most of us shy away from standing out. As a species, we're designed to fit in. Standing out means you were probably the first person to get eaten or attacked. So there's lots of reasons people avoid super visibility and expressing their opinions and things like that. It's it's emotionally difficult to do, but we all want the payoff. We all want the fruits, but we don't necessarily all want to do the work. But one thing I've learned is that in doing the work, we're changed. And somebody once said to me that your business will only grow when you grow. And I've found that to be absolutely true. So it sounds very flippant to call building a personal brand or your leadership brand an inner journey, but it is as much an inner journey of discovering, well, who am I? Who do I want to be to the world? What matters to me? And then actually reflecting that out into the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, my wonderful friend Leslie introduced me to you. And, she has been on this journey for a number of years. And then she started talking about her experience working with you. And I'm like, I want that. I need that. I have this idea. I've been trying to do this, but I just don't know what those next steps are. And when she introduced me to you, the first thing you did is say, I figured this out. I have a roadmap. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that roadmap looks like and the journey that you take leaders through?
I think the best thing to understand is that that map is almost like if you were to imagine this idea of building a leadership brand, it's a little bit like the hero's journey. You're going out on a quest. And a quest works best when you have a rough direction and you vaguely know where the monsters are, where the mountains are you have to climb, where the wizards are that can help you. And the personal brand business roadmap gives you a template for what that might look like and what you might have to do. So it's split into 5 stages. There's personal brand foundations, and that's really looking at who are you? Who do you want to be for? What's your zone of genius? How are we going to find some simple ways to crystallize that and to express it? And then how are we going to carry that into your social media platforms? How are we going to make sure that when people meet you on your website, that version of you that we've codified and spent a lot of work really crystallizing in is the version that people meet there? The next layer is the authority layer, because knowing who you are and who you're for and why that matters to people is one thing. But when other people tell their friends that it kind of matters, that's when things get interesting. So in the authority layer, we're looking at how are you showing up in the world as a leader. So this is, and not just in your own organization, this is important, but to the rest of the world. So we're looking at, are you speaking? Are you podcast guesting? Are you networking well? There's a lot of people that have a fairly tactical approach to networking in terms of what can it do for me today and tomorrow. But looking at, well, who are the role models that are maybe a decade ahead of me? How can I be of service to them? And what goes around comes around, and scaling that up. And then can we do to show you teaching what you do? Because teaching what you do is a strong side of authority. All of this is really designed to position you as a potential collaborator, because people who have done the work like to support others who are doing the work. And I think when you've done the work of trying to build your authority, not in terms of, hey, everybody look at me, but in terms of being a servant leader in the wider sense, other people who are on the same journey, fellow travelers, see you doing the work, and they they become true collaborators. Collaboration, collaborator is another kind of flippant word that's overused, but I mean this in the most genuine sense of people on the same journey actually helping each other. The next layer is looking at your discoverability. How are people finding you? And a lot of people get paralyzed by the choice of the number of ways that they can move towards being more visible. There's TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Then you could do ads. There's SEO. Then there's podcasting, YouTube. Where do you begin? So having a simple strategy for helping people organize the routes that make sense for them, and then building in a couple of what I would call discovery assets. So discovery assets are really these places where every time we invest in a piece of content, it has a lasting value. So for me, these are things like blog, podcast, and YouTube, because if you invest in those accounts, if you create content for those platforms, they'll go and find the audience for you long term. And a good example of that is I have a video I made 4 years ago that still gets probably 1,000 views a month. The next layer is productization. And a lot of business owners, they've kind of got their products locked in. They know what they're doing there. And what I find is that with audience comes opportunities. You may be doing what you do today based on the network and the market you have today. But if you were the go-to expert in your field, you'd probably look at perhaps niching differently, perhaps bringing in other products that were lower cost but higher volume. So there's lots of ways that you can restructure productization to capitalize on a strong leadership position. And then the next layer is really looking at how do we scale that, all the various tools towards scaling your audience, scaling your sales, things like that. There's lots of approaches to that. So that's actually the short version of the personal brand business roadmap. I don't think I've ever done it as quickly as that.
Yeah, well, you actually, I think in the roadmap you have 50 steps, don't you?
For each of these 5 steps, there are a lot of different moving parts
Okay.
potentially. And it's when you see it, and you can go to my website and download this, it's amplifyme.agency/roadmap. It's a tool that I use. It helps me as a diagnostic tool and a strategic planning tool. But yes, you can simply download the PDF. There's 50 pages in the document. For every point on the map, and it's a very visual map, there's some instructions, some things to think about. It is a very useful tool to just download and play with to trigger ideas. But it's particularly useful when you're working with me because it helps us discuss all the various options.
Yeah, for me, it's been, so, I've spent my entire career in marketing, and I know how to market businesses. I know how to market products. I know how to market services. This is so different. And leaning into this like proven model, this step by step, this is how you do this has been, for me, it's been just like you're not in this alone. I felt like I was in alone in it alone for a long time, "Hey, I'm trying to do this. I've got these ideas." But having somebody that's like, "Hey, this is how it works." For me, it's been fabulous. Um, for you, like, of all the different clients that you've worked with, like, who stands out as somebody that's really transformative? And can you tell me a little bit about their journey with you and how that went?
A lot of the work that I do, I quite intentionally do in the shadows. So you mentioned, Leslie, I would I would never presume to do that because my clients need to be seen to be taking the credit for their work because they do the work. And as soon as it's apparent that I'm involved, there's always a danger it's going to look like manipulation. So I tend to not use case studies or anything like that. I'm not going to avoid the question. I'm going to speak to it in a moment.
Okay,
But I
sure.
also want to quickly say about the personal brand business roadmap. It's built on the shoulder of giants. I didn't come up with this stuff. But what I did do was look at that point, I'd probably done 150 podcast interviews of legends. And I wanted a way to structure my work for myself, but also a way of giving clients some confidence in the journey. So it came out of what was probably about 150 sticky notes up on a wall, gradually found some structure. And then it resolved into the roadmap that you see now. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
It's not something I just made up one day. In terms of client work, it's so diverse. I've got clients right at the beginning of their business journey. And for 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 one in particular, I'm thinking it's a guy who's changed career. He had no experience on social media at all. He was terrified of social media, still is, to be honest. He didn't know how to sell anything. Um, he and these are two basic things. Business is a simple formula. It's traffic or visibility plus conversion equals money. That's it. And then plus retention equals growth. These are all the only levers we really need to pull. So if you're at the very beginning of your business journey, we're not going to make it complicated. It's going to be you need to start doing a little bit of networking. You need to start following a simple sales process. I have a framework. I have a framework for everything, but I have something I call the Reach Daily Sales Ritual. You just do these 5 things for 15 minutes every day. You will become a sales machine. And that's all he needed. So he's a new start mortgage broker. At the other end of the equation, who's a good example here? I have a client who runs a ghostwriting business, and he has a team to take care of everything for him. And I spent a year telling him, you need a podcast. And the reason he needed a podcast was, how do I qualify this? So I have something I call the zero listen podcast strategy, where how can we design a podcast that's going to be successful for you, even if nobody listens? And this particular guy was a wonderful marketer, is a wonderful marketer, a wonderful salesperson. The problem he had was every time he went out to approach a potential client, and a client for him is worth $30,000, he had a little bit of rejection because they could see him coming trying to sell something. So what we wanted to do was position him as a micro celebrity in his industry. That's goal number one. So when he's approaching people, it's a little bit, ooh, this looks interesting. But at the same time, using his podcast as a way to start conversations with potential customers because they're also interesting people. So we designed a podcast that would allow him to begin conversations with potential customers as podcast guests, build a relationship. And now he's scaled that to the point where he has 3 people doing podcasts for him full time. And he is now an industry celebrity. So those are a couple of stories. I think this can work in any business. Every business essentially will benefit from being positioned as a leader. And I work specifically with business owners, because I've found that human charisma cuts through more efficiently than anything else. You will spend 10% of the money trying to build a personal brand that's got some recognition than you will trying to achieve the same thing with a corporate brand. So I put all my effort now into building the business owner's personal brand recognition.
Yeah, as we've talked about, I'm part of Entrepreneurs Organization, and whenever and it's a lot of networking as well as and not networking for business. It's not for business, but networking to build those relationships that are in a very similar position to you. But whenever I say I'm a marketing firm, because there's so many marketing firms in there, everybody just tunes out. But when I start talking about this, when I start talking about I'm building my personal brand, I want to be like known for creativity. I want to transform businesses everywhere. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I start talking about all of this. Everybody tunes in, lights up. They are, especially entrepreneurs, people that have started their own business or running their own business. I find that they like an identity that's not directly connected to their business, but, it's like this separate identity of who they are. And, in this world, there's a lot of people that are selling their businesses, exiting their business, but it's like that identity helps them transition to the next phase of what they're going to be doing in their career. Do you have anybody in your client group that has done that? That their personal brand kind of became existential above their business brand?
I think all of them really.
Okay.
That's a primary goal. Um, I think something I'm very aware of is if you can think in any business community, think in your own business community, and the listener at home can imagine along with us.
Yeah.
In any business community, there are businesses where you know the person who runs the business. They are the local celebrity. And some people just naturally do this. But the rest of us can do it too. It just takes a little bit of courage. It's not natural for most people. But what I've found is whenever you look at these businesses, they seem to have an X factor. They just seem to thrive. Opportunity seems to gravitate to them first. If they don't want it, then it kind of rolls downhill to somebody else. We can all achieve this. So that's number one. Your current business will thrive if you build a leadership brand. The second point is somebody once described your personal brand as the last pivot you will ever need to make. And it's something that I'm acutely aware of is this whole idea of a lot of people build their business intentionally to sell them at some point. Everybody has an exit plan. And if we look at, well, what do we walk away with if we sell our business and we don't have a personal brand? The answer is not much. We have to begin again with nothing but our brain. But if we're still really well known in our industry, if we're still really well known as a leader, we're still really well known as an expert, then everything is accelerated next time. We're not starting at nothing. A lot of people in marketing in particular, they think in terms of addressable market. And I like to think actually in terms of audience. And an audience are into us and what we do and what we stand for. And if one of those things is our company, great. But that's not all. If you think of any great leader, online or off, you probably know quite a lot about them. And that's why they thrive, not just in one business, but across multiple businesses.
A note from our sponsor, Advan Creative, and our featured client, 𝗕𝗿𝗶𝘀. 𝗕𝗿𝗶𝘀 delivers Michigan's best golf and ski experience with 4 championship courses designed by Fazio, Trent Jones, and Smith, and a par 3 recognized by ESPN as the best par 3 in the country. It's also the ideal meeting location for corporate retreats, conferences, and conventions. Take your team or top customers for a dream golf trip at 𝗕𝗿𝗶𝘀.com. There are 17 direct flights to Traverse City, and you can get there very easily, and it's really worth the trip.
For me, it's like I'm viewing this as, my life has been in quarters, starting, being in a company, having kids, and now I'm at this last quarter, which is freedom. So it's being able to create this freedom of doing what I want, doing the way I want it, to make sure that there's no stones unturned, that I'm having the impact that I want to have, that I feel I'm supposed to have. And this gives me the ability to, and the platform to say, just to really go inside and say, what do I want? What will make me happy? And what will make me feel like I've done what I'm supposed to do? And this for me is that thing. And your assistance has been amazing in saying, this is how you do it. This is, you need to write a book. You need to have a masterclass. You need to have a podcast. You need to have all these elements that build that expert authority and credibility. And am I alone in that, or is this normal? Like that this is all of a sudden you're like, I want to do what I want to do versus, that day-to-day business.
Everybody's motivated by different things. Some people are motivated by money. That's absolutely fine. Some people are motivated by impact, and that's fine too. Other people are motivated by a sense of personal mission. And sometimes it's extreme, sometimes it's a blend. But understanding what it is that motivates you, what are you for, is a lot of the time going to be what drives the decisions that you make. And also understanding at different seasons of life, these motivations will change. I think if we look at, so I have one client who is outrageously successful, fifth generation business owner. Their business now isn't just looking after their money. And it's a several tens, multiple million, I don't know how you would put it. Their personal brand journey is all around impact. It's all about how can we have greater impact. So with a stronger leadership brand comes access to decision makers, comes an ability to align with and enlist the support of others, to build a movement. That's what motivates them. Whereas another client, they're really looking at it from a very mercenary perspective in terms of how can I access markets that I would have struggled with before? How can I begin sales conversations where people would never have spoken to me before? How can I have people coming to me as the one to exclude, and positioning yourself so somebody would get fired for not choosing you?
I love that.
Everybody's kind of different.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a long answer to a short question, but everybody's different.
Yeah, but I love that. Somebody would get fired for not choosing you. We've got to use that for marketing. I love it. Yeah, it's definitely a journey, but it's also like these doses of confidence that you get working with you that, okay, this is real. Because first of all, it doesn't feel real. It's like, is this just a crazy idea I'm having? And working with you, there becomes this reality to it. Like, yeah, this is real. This is how you do it. This is how, and you're building this confidence all the way that you are that brand, you are that expert, you have this. And it's just it's so valuable, but it's not like one thing though. It's like this building momentum.
I think there are some constants in the work that I do. And what's fascinating is that it doesn't matter who you speak to, whether it's multimillionaire or complete new entrepreneur. The same monsters climb out of the cupboard to attack us. And they are things like comparison. We will always compare ourselves to others in a way that think, well, I can't do that because he's done that or she's done that. Or fear of looking foolish, and fear of rejection, and jealousy. A lot of the time, we won't do things because we're jealous of other people. And understanding that these are the constants. And imposter syndrome, the classic one. Honestly, imposter syndrome is the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen, because some of the smartest people I've ever met are crippled by it. But just understanding that these are the monsters that we have to battle on the hero's journey, you just need to pick the right sword or the right bow, and they're quite easy to deal with. And a lot of the time, it simply boils down to just shining a light on them. If you can see them for what they are, you can move past them. The reason, and this is fascinating, the reason I think a lot of people that we see online tend to be the ultra outgoing, choleric, gregarious types is because they don't really have the sensitivities that most of us do have. Things like, I still can't really bear to see myself on camera. Most people can't bear the sound of their own voice. This is biology.
I know,
Understanding that
I
it's
never go
biology.
back and watch it ever.
No, but there's a lot to fight against in this.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, so I describe myself as part strategic advisor, part coach, because that's simply for the emotional work. And the bigger the company, the more accomplished the leader, the more embarrassed they are by these things, and understanding these aren't normal. These are not, there's nothing wrong with you being embarrassed by these things. That's normal. And they think they're failing because of these things. No. If you recognize these things, you've discovered there's a door to knock on. And on the other side of that door, there's all the opportunity. Once you have a toolbox for dealing with these things, it's easy. And then the final aspect of what I do is the technical support, and that's the easy stuff.
It's really powerful, and it's freeing too. It's freeing because all, like you said, those monsters, and especially imposter syndrome. But it's yeah, it's wonderful stuff. I think it helps leaders too. Like, I'm a huge fan of don't do business for profit, do business for something beyond that. And I really believe this is part of that impact journey of what is your brand about? What is the impact? It has to be more than just for money, for people to get behind it, for teams to, to build that passionate brand, build a beloved brand. It's so important to not do it for money.
I think
Um,
Zig
yeah.
Ziglar put it best. He said something along the lines of, if you can just help enough people get what they want, then you can have anything you want. Something like that.
That's
I think
beautiful.
I butchered it.
Yeah, but that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So if somebody's interested in finding out more about you, and if to determine are they the right client for you? Do they fit the model of what you're looking for as far as clients to grow your business? One, how do they reach out to you? And two, how do they start that conversation with you?
So I am really easy to find. Just Google Bob Gentle or visit amplifyme.agency. Um, it will be me who replies to the email. I'm a very small show. Um, if you are listening thinking, maybe, then I invest a lot in people before they become a customer. My goal is I will give you as much value as I possibly can in an hour and a half. And if I can get you excited to work with me in that hour and a half, then you can ask me how that works. But I don't hard sell anybody. There's no big sales engine. My sales process is excess generosity. It's that simple.
Oh, I love it. It's a beautiful thing. And yes, you are very generous. And yes, everything does work. And yes, it's a tough, long process, I believe, if you're trying to work your day job too. But it's so rewarding, and I think it's a journey every leader needs to be on. It's that self-discovery as well as, your impact in your personal journey. So I think it's really important for leaders. Well, thank you, and thank you for joining me on the show today, and I'm sure I'm going to have you back on the show when we're a little bit further along and we can kind of recap our journey together. And, my next goal is to get my book and then my masterclass. And then once those are in place, then let's reconnect here and talk about my journey. So, okay.
I would be delighted to do that. And also, if you ever want to just talk tactics and tech,
Sure.
we can
Yeah.
do that too.
Okay. We'll do another.
Doesn't have to be about you.
Yeah.
But I want to say thank you very much. This is probably the most, from a selfish perspective, generous interview I've ever done. It's very rare I've done anything that's even come close to advertorial. And this is probably it. So I will be using this everywhere. It's been so good. The questions so well positioned to make me look good. I'm really glad.
Well, you're making me look good. So it's just, again, it's that we're both coming from the same place. We just want to help. So
Well, thank you very much.
thank you. Okay. Thank you for your time today.